Okay, here we are, video number 10. We'll be talking about nominal and effective interest rates, but I want to begin by taking back a fib I told you in the last video, and that has to do, or maybe it was number 8, I'm not sure, but it had to do with the numbering of the sections in the book and what were good sections and what were bad sections. So let me correct that once and for all here, and I will just hold the book in front of me so that I can be telling you the truth. We have covered, and essentially you're responsible for everything in chapter 4, including section 410. Before I had remembered section 410 as something a little bit different. As a matter of fact, I believe it's section 413. I'll get there in a minute. Section 410 is fine. As a matter of fact, we covered part of we've covered section 410 without me explicitly mentioning it. We covered it in particular last time when we talked about gradients. So 411 was the arithmetic gradient. We're still good to go. 412 is the geometric gradient. We're still good to go. So everything from 401 through 412 looks really good. 413 is the section that I was referring to mistakenly as section 410 earlier. 413, interest rates that vary with time. That's the one we will skip. It's again, to solve these just requires a brute force kind of approach where you just keep track of the funds you have, the money you have available. So 413 is something you're not going to be held responsible for at all. We're going to speak about section 414 and 415 in this video. That's nominal and effective interest rates and compounding more often than once per year. So those will be covered today. And section 416 is continuous compounding. We will not cover section 416. That's the last content section. There's a case study. We don't worry about, not going to worry about that in particular, although it's a nice case study. So 416, continuous compounding, is not something that we will cover in here, nor will you be responsible for. So section 414 and 415 are the subject areas for this video, nominal and effective interest rates. And let me just shoot you a quick intro. So far, we've played a little fast and loose with our interest rates. In a sense, anyway, we haven't talked much about compounding, except we talked about compound interest and what that was. Well, its compounding can be over different periods of time. For example, you might have an annual interest rate of 12% that's compounded monthly. And if it's compounded monthly, that means that every month interest is compounded, not just every year. So an annual or a monthly compounding 1% per month. If you had 12% per year, 1% per month. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. When you see advertisements in the newspaper, I should have brought one with me. I've got a stack of papers here, but I haven't looked through them yet. You will see advertisements, or you'll hear people talking about APR. APR of 15%, APR of 8%, APR. That's the way generally places who want to sell you something and want to inform you about how cheap it might be to borrow the money. And that they will loan you, talk about APR. APR stands for annual percentage rate. Well, the annual percentage rate turns out to be the nominal interest rate. So nominal in name only, which means it's not false. It is the interest rate, but the term nominal means that it may not be the true, real interest that you're paying, and we'll find out about that here in just a moment. There's another 3 letters that you might hear, and this generally would be relayed to you from those who want your money invested with them. So this would be like banks or investment houses that would like for you to invest in them. And this is APY, annual percentage yield. The annual percentage yield really is the effective interest rate. So we're going to deal with two interest rates now, nominal interest rate and effective interest rate. We'll talk about them generically, but where we're headed with this, the most important part of this, the reason we study this is because to solve our problems, whatever problems we face, so far we have not worried about the fact that the cash flows must match up with the interest. And that is if we have cash flows that are monthly, we need to have a monthly interest rate. If we have cash flows that are quarterly, we need to use a quarterly interest rate. And if our cash flows are annually, we need to have an annual interest rate. And you should be able to understand that from the functions we use in the spreadsheets. These functions require that n, the number of periods, whatever that is, to match up with the interest per period. And we use n based on cash flows. So the cash flows must match the interest rate. That is an introduction. Now let us kind of dive into this, the world of nominal and effective interest rates, what they mean, and how we can fairly easily handle the transition from one to the other. So I have here again, I have a spreadsheet that will be posted with this video, and I'll go through that spreadsheet right now. Okay, there we have the spreadsheet called effective interest, and this is nominal and effective interest rates. And I want to start just by going through a quick problem here. We'll come over to this this discussion in just a moment. First, let's consider 12% annual interest, but the compounding is monthly. So if we take the 12%, we divide it by the number of months in a year, which is 12. We find that this is 1% interest per month. So let's calculate what happens to $100 as it grows during the year. End of month and the current balance. So we start off with $100. At the end of the first month, the $1 to $100 would have grown by $1, 1% of 100. So we'll say it's the previous balance times, I'll put this in detail here, 1 plus 0.01, or $101. In year two, same deal, right? Same thing, 102. It won't be exactly 102. Let's look at some more decimals. $102 and a penny, because the interest is compounded. You can already see that that we're going to be growing this, just like when we initially talked about compound interest. This will be growing as we move through the year. Here in month 4, it's $104.06. In year 7, we have $107.21. All the way to year 12. I'm sorry, month 12. What do we have? $112.68. So we started with $100 and we ended with $112.68. So what was the interest that we earned? It's equal to what we ended with minus what we began with. We earned $12.68 in interest. Well, if we take the $12.68 and divide it by what we started with, 100, we get the interest. Change the format of that. It's a number. And or let's go ahead and make it a percent. 12.68%. This is the effective interest. So our nominal interest rate is 12%. That's the nominal APR, if you will, 12%. Compounded monthly, turns out, is an effective interest rate of 12.68%. Now you may be sitting there thinking, big whoop, not a big difference, nothing to write home about. And yet, again, as I mentioned many videos ago, when we're talking about real money, thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in particular, you know, this can be a huge difference. And especially over time, as it grows, as interest, compound interest does, this is a big difference. So if our cash flows were annual, and we said it was a nominal interest rate of 12% compounded monthly, then to solve our problem, we would use, for the annual cash flows, an interest rate of 12.68% instead of 12% in specifying the interest. Now, so we have some new notation to consider. R is the nominal annual interest. For this problem right here, our R is 12%. That's our nominal annual interest. M is the number of compounding periods per year. For this particular example here, that's 12. 12 compounding periods per year because it's compounded monthly. The formula to find the effective annual interest rate is given in section 414 of the textbook. And this is equal to, I'll do my best to put it here, 1 plus R over, R over M. So 1 plus R over M. Notice that R over M is this 1% here, right? R over M is the interest per compounding period. So if it's compounded monthly, the compounding period is a month, and the R over M tells us what the interest is per compounding period. I'm going to take that to the power M. So we're gonna take that up through the months, month after month after month. And you may notice this looks a lot like 1 plus I to the n, our F given P. And in fact, that's very much what this is. It's the same concept. But now here at the end, I'm going to subtract 1. So the subtracting 1 comes after the, is not part of the M here. So let me mark that off just to be complete. And that's our formula for the effective annual interest rate. Let's do it on this problem. We would say this is equal to 1 plus R over M is 0.12 divided by 12 to the power M. So to the power 12 minus 1. And there we have it. I'm going to convert that so we can see it to a percent, 12.68%. So the formula works fine. Very nice, very well done. That is now that's an effective annual interest rate. Let's apply that. Let's go over here to this second sheet and look at some nominal rates and find the effective rates for each one of these. This is this effective right here is let me make this larger. Compounded how often will it be compounded? Well, let's compound monthly. And then let's compound quarterly, and let's compound daily. Let's find all of these. So here we go. If we have a nominal rate of 3% compounded monthly, so 12 compounding periods per year, M is 12. The effective annual interest would be equal to 1 plus, here's our interest rate, divided by 12 to the 12th minus 1. And let me go ahead and pre-format some of these to be percents. 3.04%. I'm going to copy this across, and we'll find out what that is for all of these. Notice as the interest rate gets larger, the effective interest gets farther away from the nominal interest rate. 8.03, 16.08%, so we're more than a percent higher. Way out here at this high rate of 25 nominal, the difference between nominal and effective is over 3% interest. Okay, compounded quarterly. Now, one would think that if we compound quarterly, that's less often, right? That's only 4 times per year. So one would suspect that that the effective interest rate wouldn't be quite as high as monthly compounding. Let's check and see. So this is equal to 1 plus, here's our 3%, divided by 4 now because we're compounding quarterly, to the 4th power minus 1, 3.03%. So apparently we were right. And yes, indeed, in all cases, compounding quarterly gives us a lower effective interest than if we compound it monthly. Let's look at daily, because as it turns out, and you should check the fine print on your credit cards, certainly at least there, they compound the interest every single day. Saturdays and Sundays, holidays, everything, they're compounding your interest. So let's look at the effects of that. That's equal to 1 plus R over M is R divided by M. What's M? 365. Taken to the power of 365 minus 1. 3.05%. Doesn't look, too terribly bad, but certainly we would have expected, and it's borne out, that with daily compounding, that effective interest rate is even higher. And as we take this on out, we can see that, yes, the effective interest rate is largest for the more frequent compounding of a daily compounding. Okay, that's fine. Now that we've done that, let's talk about a function. The spreadsheet function, there is a spreadsheet function for this. I like the formula myself. I'm just comfortable with it. But there is a very simple spreadsheet function that allows us to solve these. Let me insert some rows here, a couple of rows. Let's find the effective interest rate using the function here that's built in. The function is effect, annual effective interest rate. And the arguments, let me show you the description here. The arguments are, the first argument is the nominal rate. So we will put in the nominal interest rate. And the second argument is simply the number of compounding periods per year. So this should be pretty simple to do here. There we go. There's our nominal rate. and the periods per year is 12 if we're compounding monthly. And lo and behold, we get the same answer. And I'll drag this across and we'll get the same answers all the way across. If it's quarterly, nominal rate, 3%. Compounding period 4 per year. And again, whoops. Same thing. $365. And I hadn't formatted this for percents. There we go. So you can see that the effect function is one that gives us the answers we would expect. It gives us the same answers as the formula because, son of a gun, it uses the formula to calculate those effective interest rates. Now, one more thing that we need to know about effective interest rates. This is all well and good, and this is finding effective annual interest rates. So everything we've done before in this video is finding effective interest rates. However, you may need to find an interest rate that's not annual, and you may need to find an interest rate that doesn't match up with a compounding period. For example, cash flows are quarterly. Interest is compounded monthly. Let's talk about that case. Let's say that R is equal to 12%. That's the, here, let me do that. R is equal to 12%. M is equal to 12. We're compounding monthly. So we have a nominal interest of 12%, compounding monthly. So our R over M, or our interest per compounding period, R over M is equal to 1%. 1% per month. That's fine, but our cash flows are quarterly. So in order to solve our problems, we need to have a quarterly interest rate. How do we have a quarterly interest rate? Well, let me go back to the first sheet and let's talk about that for a moment. Here I'm compounding monthly. And remember, a quarter has 3 months in it. There are 3 months in a quarter. It's easy to be confused and to think 4 months in a quarter because you're thinking quarter, you're thinking 4. 3 months in a quarter. So if we had $100 and it's compounded monthly and we go forward for 3 months, this looks to me like 3.03%, right? 3.03%. So I have 12% interest, compounded monthly, but I need a quarterly interest rate. The quarterly interest rate is going to be 3.03%, not 3%, right? 12% divided by 4 quarterly is 3%, but because it's compounded monthly, it's somewhat larger than that. So what is our effective quarterly rate? Our effective quarterly rate is going to be equal to 1 plus, we've already got our R over M, stays the same. 1 plus R over M And then it's the power that's the secret here. How many months are in a quarter? There are 3 months in a quarter. 3 months in a quarter. And then we subtract 1. Here's our quarterly effective interest rate, 3.03%. So what we used here is the effective annual interest formula, except the only difference is this exponent right here. Whereas before, this exponent would have been 12 because we were looking for the effective annual interest, and there are 12 months in a year. If we're looking for quarterly interest, there are 3 months in a quarter, so the exponent is 3. If we were looking for the effective semi-annual interest, effective semi-annual interest, this would be 1 plus, again, it's still the quarterly rate. How many quarters are in our semi-annual? There's 6 minus 1, or 6.15%. So we may have to do this. We may have to take these other steps in order to find an effective interest rate that matches our cash flow frequency, quarterly, semi-annually, whatever. Now I'm going to shoot you. Everything I said applies. This is fine. We can stop right there. But I'm going to shoot you a very quick use of the function effect to find these same numbers. If I want a quarterly rate, an effective quarterly rate, here's another way to do it. This is really generally not the way I do it, but we could do this. Okay, the first argument is a nominal rate. I would adjust my nominal rate here, and I would put here the nominal quarterly rate. So here, this first argument, I'm going to put the nominal annual rate, and I'm going to divide it by 4. That will give me essentially a nominal quarterly rate, and the periods per year become how many months in the quarter, and that's 3, and that will give me, again, the correct quarterly effective rate. Semi-annual, %12 divided by 2. There are 2 semi-annual periods in a year. How many months are in semi-annual period? 6. And there we have the 6.15% effective semi-annual rate. If your cash flows are monthly, you would use 1%. If your cash flows are quarterly, you'd use 3.03%. If your cash flows are semi-annual, you'd use 6.15%. And if your cash flows were annual, you would use the 12.68% that we found back on sheet 1 as the effective interest rate, 12% compounded monthly, the effective annual interest rate. So that's effective and nominal interest. Pretty quick treatment, and you may have to think about it a little bit, and you certainly have to think about it when you solve your problems. One of the first things that you need to address when you're solving a problem is, how frequently are my cash flows? Generally, right? I mean, some of them may be every 4 years, some of them every 2 years, some of them every year, but the minimum of those is what we need to work on. So how frequently are my cash flows? What interest rate am I given? And how do I determine an interest rate, an effective interest rate that matches the cash flows, matches the frequency of the cash flows. And that's when we need to use these tools to find the effective interest rate. You should never be using a nominal annual rate unless it's compounded annually and your cash flows are annual. Then you're okay. I will say that in any problem whatsoever, when you hear an interest rate and it's given with no modifiers, you should think nominal annual interest. And if there's nothing stated about compounding, then you should assume, you can safely assume it's compounded per year. So the nominal rate and the effective annual rate are the same. If there are, if it's going to be different than that, once again, you may be given a rate. If I say the rate is 8% compounded quarterly, then you know that the 8% refers to a nominal annual rate, which is compounded quarterly. So the nominal effective annual, the effective annual rate will be something larger than that 8%. And the 8%, if it's compounded quarterly, the interest per compounding period will be 2% per quarter, and you can work from that. That's all I have about nominal and effective interest. And as a matter of fact, that's it for Chapter 4. We're finished with Chapter 4 now. My next video will kick off Chapter 5. And just as a preview, in Chapter 5, we're going to take all these tools that we've learned. We're going to use those to assess whether or not a particular investment opportunity, and that investment opportunity could be a project, it might be a piece of software, it might be a big machine, it might be anything that a company would wish to invest in. We're going to determine whether the company should invest in that. Is it profitable for the company to invest in a particular investment alternative? We'll learn new terms like the minimum attractive rate of return. We'll learn more about the internal rate of return as a measure of performance of an investment. And we'll use the old standbys, the present value and the future value and the annual worth, and things like that, in order to assess the performance of an alternative. So that's coming up in Chapter 5, and that will be the subject of the next video, Video 11, which will be coming along here. Perhaps I'll be posting that in about half a day from when I'm recording this. I am going to take July, we can only wish, December 31 and January 1. I'll be silent for those 2 days. I may be checking some email on rare occasion. But I hope you'll get a little bit of time off, celebrate the new year as well. But then I'll be back to it, and we'll be plugging away on Chapter 5 sometime on I'm saying tomorrow because it will be tomorrow, sometime on December 31 or December 30, tomorrow. I will be putting out some information on Quiz 1, and for those of you who are well caught up, you may want to go ahead and take Quiz 1, but you'll get more of that tomorrow on December 30th. So that's it for video number 10. I'll be back with you with video 11 here very soon.